Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed.
Great to be back.
Today, we're jumping into Genesis chapter 6. We're kind of reading through the Bible together, almost like fellow travelers, trying to unpack this incredible story.
Exactly. And chapter 6 really picks up speed after chapter 5. Remember, chapter 5 was, well, mostly a genealogy.
Right, the begats.
Yeah, lots of begats. Tracing the line from Adam through Seth, we saw those incredibly long lifespans, like Methuselah living, 969 years.
Amazing.
And that really unique mention of Enoch in Genesis chapter 5, verse 24, how he walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. No death mentioned, just gone.
Which is fascinating in itself.
Totally. And all that leads us right up to the birth of Noah, who is, of course, central to chapter 6.
Okay, so let's dive into chapter 6 because, wow, it starts with a bang. It says, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born unto them. Seems normal enough.
Right, population growth. But then it gets strange. Verse 2 talks about the sons of God seeing the daughters of men and taking them as wives. And this leads to, verse 4 says, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Giants, sons of God.
Yeah, it's one of the Bible's more mysterious passages. Who exactly are these sons of God? The interpretations vary a lot. Something fallen angels, others maybe the godly line of Seth mixing with others, or even powerful rulers.
It's not totally clear.
Not explicitly, no. But the result mentioned is these Nephilim, these giants or mighty men. It paints a picture of boundaries being crossed, maybe divine and human, leading to, chaos.
And that chaos seems to escalate quickly because the very next verses describe God's reaction. Genesis chapter 6, verse 5 is powerful. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. It wasn't just occasional bad acts, it was the core inclination, constant. That's a heavy realization, and it leads to perhaps one of the most human-like descriptions of God's feelings in the whole Bible.
It really is. Verse 6, and it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. Repentance, deep grief. It's profound sorrow.
Not just anger, but actual heartbreak.
Exactly. And that divine heartbreak leads to a devastating decision in verse 7 to essentially wipe the slate clean, destroying humans, animals, birds, everything, a total reset.
It sounds so final, but then like a light switch flicking on in a dark room, you get verse 8, just one sentence.
But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord.
What a pivot. After all that darkness and judgment, one man finds grace.
And the text immediately tells us why. Verse 9 calls Noah a just man and perfect in his generations. And significantly, it repeats a phrase we heard about Enoch. And Noah walked with God.
So he's set apart. He's different from the world around him.
Radically different. Because verses 11 and 12 describe that world as corrupt before God and filled with violence. Noah's faithfulness, his walk with God, is this stark contrast.
Which makes him the one God chooses for this monumental task. God lays out the plan.
He does. Starting in verse 13, God tells Noah the end has come for all flesh because of the violence, and then gives him these incredibly specific instructions.
Yeah, build an ark, and not just any ark. It says, make thee an ark of gopher wood.
Specific material.
Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch, like waterproofing it.
Makes sense, given what's coming.
And the size, 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high. That's roughly 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. Huge. With a window, a door, 3 decks.
The massive undertaking. And then God establishes his covenant with Noah in verse 18. He promises to save Noah, his family.
His sons, his wife, his sons' wives.
Right? And not just them, but also pairs of every living creature, male and female, to keep them alive through the flood. Plus, instructions to gather food for everyone and everything on board.
It's an incredible preservation plan. And Noah's response.
Complete obedience. The chapter ends strongly in verse 22. Thus did Noah, according to all that God commanded him, so did he. No questions, no arguments recorded, just obedience.
So chapter 6 takes us from the strange scenario with the sons of God through the depths of human wickedness and God's grief to this moment of grace with Noah, and finally the detailed command to build the ark as part of a covenant. It's quite a journey.
It absolutely is. It sets up everything that follows with the flood narrative.
It leaves you thinking about what it means to find grace, especially when the world seems, overwhelming or corrupt.
That's a great point. It really poses a question for us today, doesn't it? What does it look like to walk with God like Enoch and Noah did? How do we live with that kind of faith and obedience when faced with our own complex challenges? Maybe Noah's story isn't just about a boat, but about radical trust in the face of impossible circumstances.
Definitely something to reflect on.